Okay, we're back to Generation Breakdown, where we take what's in pop culture, we analyze it to the utmost degree. Why? Well, we feel like it, and we hope that you enjoy it. I'm Derrick.
And I'm Jamal.
And today we're looking at Guardians of the Galaxy, Marvel's latest installment into their cinematic franchise, and the last movie we will be getting before we get the second Avengers movie. So, we saw it yesterday. Mm-hmm. So it's a day after. We let that all digest in us. And I am still extremely happy with that movie. Just in general, I loved it. I'm a fan of sci-fi and comedy, and that just fit well. And congratulations to James Gunn for bringing me that.
I was genuinely surprised by it. Honestly, when I saw the trailers, I was just like, really? Are you that desperate for money? That was my honest opinion.
Why pick this group?
No, not even that. It was just like, it just seemed like a really kind of money-grubbing kind of thing because my bullshit meter was going off. It was just like, no. I did collect comics, and I still keep up on it here and there, like news and stuff like that, so I know of Guardians of the Galaxy, but even still, I was just like, I was like, come on, really? But when I went to see it, I have to admit, I was actually seriously impressed with it. It was... Again, I was tired of all the promotions because you couldn't escape the promotions for the last 5 months.
Well, they promoted the hell out of that movie because it is a lesser known franchise, and they're like, we have to get people excited for this.
It was still fucking annoying. It almost felt like brainwashing to a point, to be honest. But it was like, I was just, when I finally did go to see it, it was just like, wow, this is actually not half bad. And I was really surprised by it, and it was enjoyable.
One of the things I want to bring up on that is, it was a Marvel movie, but it was a different take on a Marvel movie. We've seen the uber serious Marvel movies like Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Mm-hmm. We've seen the Tony Stark, where in the Iron Man movies he has that comedic side to him. It's a nice little blend. This one here tend to lean more along the lines of this is a space action comedy. And there was a lot more of this comedic element to it, which I felt as a fan of the comics. Like I loved I never read the original incarnation of Guardians of the Galaxy where it's a team from the future, but I read the ones that came out where it had Peter Jason Quill, the Star-Lord, and Rocket Raccoon. I read those, I still do, and I think it grasps that like essence of the comic itself, because. Yeah, they have fun. Yeah, they have like their adventures, and they have their serious moments. But overall, it's a goofy comic, and I think that's what they grasped well.
I thought the whole taking the whole venue to space really worked for it. So yeah, it did have kind of a sci-fi-ish feeling to it, which was a nice break from Marvel, the whole Marvel Universe thing. Even though it was still the Marvel Universe, it didn't feel like it. It felt like it was its own separate thing, and that was great, and because in sci-fi movies, it's like there's a lot you can get away with because to a degree, certain things kind of make a little bit more sense because it is science fiction. It's taking technologies to another level that may not exist yet.
You don't have to abide by the rules of our world.
Well, they still try to, but they try to explain it through technology of how it happened. So, in terms of as a sci-fi movie, it did, work very well with that, and I was genuinely, impressed with how they made it work, and it was funny. It was surprisingly hilarious, and I was just like. Especially the raccoon. I love the idea. Yeah, Rocket Raccoon. I love the idea of a psychotic raccoon.
But at the same time, though, the comedic moments, some of them were, here's a joke for you, but some of them felt more like, no, this is how the character really is. It's not like other comedies where it's just like, here we go, we're going to accept this joke. Whereas, like with Drax, played by Dave Bautista, a lot of his jokes were just the fact that his race takes things very literally. I mean, there's one point where they're talking about how he doesn't take he only takes things literally. So they stand there just like, he won't understand. We'll go over his head. He goes, nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast. I'll catch it. Where it's just like, that's something this guy would legitimately say.
Right. I mean, yeah, I did like that aspect where they, that a lot of the characters in the movies don't understand human metaphors, and I thought that was funny. But I guess overall, it's just like it was a nice break. I mean, some people. I mean, after we saw, you kind of compared it to Star Wars. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would go that far because Star Wars kind of had a rustic feeling to it.
I meant in terms of pacing. Because
Right.
the first Star Wars movie, you weren't given too much information. You weren't given the whole Jedi mythos that now exists due to the expanded universe and all the other movies that came after it. You were given as little information as what was needed, and then you just went. And that's what I meant by it being like Star Wars, because
Yeah.
you were thrust into forcing this group together, like in Star Wars. They're just forced together. Yeah, they have their conflicts, scruffy little nerf herder and whatnot, and then they just kind of band together as one for this one cause. There's one moment where Ronan the Accuser, he's standing there in his spaceship.
Explain to everyone that,
Okay.
Just briefly.
Ronan the Accuser, he's a Kree fanatic, is how you describe him. He's one of the antagonists. He's the main antagonist who just wants to destroy Xandar because he doesn't like Xandarians. His people have been warring with him for years. So he's just that fanatic. And he's standing there in his spaceship, kind of like this desolate black thing. He's talking to this big hologram. And he does it twice. But one of them is to Thanos' I guess we would call him his herald. He speaks for him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this big hologram head. It brought me back to even just that imagery used in Empire Strikes Back.
That's a good point.
Where Vader's standing there talking to the Emperor, and the fact that this guy had this big black hood, the big hologram guy, had a hood on. Just like, that's the fucking Emperor! Yeah! You could definitely see James Gunn drawing from that. James Gunn as a director draws a lot from what he likes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that he does is he loves 80s stuff and nostalgia, so he throws that into his movies a lot too. And that was a big thing for, I think that's one of the big marketing things that they did for the movie was the 70s, early 80s music. And as you said, you're kind of tired of not so much, I guess, the music, but more of just stop paying me over the head with this.
Right. I was surprised by how well the music actually worked because it's playing this retro music in this uber futuristic situation, and it worked. And it was just kind of like, wow. It made sense.
It didn't seem forced like in some movies you hear a popular song and you're just like, what is this doing here?
Well, I'll give you an example. Like for when Jet Li's a martial artist from China. He was kind of big for a while and still is a little bit in some action movies like Expendables. But when he got popular in the United States, after Lethal Weapon, I think it was 3, they started throwing him all these kind of martial arts action flicks. But they always put him though with with this rap sequence all the time, and it just
they do. Holy shit!
It just got old, and it was just like as soon as the fight starts out, someone starts rapping, and I love rap. Don't get me wrong, but story wise, it was just like
it takes you out of it.
This makes no fucking sense, There was one movie where he's in France. All right, he's fighting in France. There is nothing urban or ghetto about this, and then suddenly he starts fighting these two twin martial artists, or whatever, and a rap sequence busts out, and it's just like, what? And that took me completely out of the fight sequence because I was just kind of like, what the fuck is this? So in Guardians of the Galaxy, I was just kind of surprised by how, wow, this actually kind of works, because it actually made sense to the story. It didn't feel forced. I mean, when it starts out, I was kind of worried it was going to start to feel forced, but it didn't. It wasn't overdone. And there was a legitimate reason for it. They established a legitimate reason for why it's playing this music there.
It's a connection to Star Lord. He has this
The main
emotional
character.
connection with it.
Right. So I thought that was just like really well done and balanced out properly, where it wasn't like you're getting whacked over the head with this over and over again. It's just like, okay, stop.
Well, they found that balance between when do we use this and when do we use this space orchestration that we have for like action sequences. They had other music that fit that tone, but for big establishing things, they would have more of the '70s music, and it's almost like you're sitting there in Peter Quill's head, Star Lord's head, and just as he's taking things in, like the prison sequence, it's almost like you see the camera. You don't see anyone. You just see the camera panning and looking around. It's just like you're in his head, and this is the music's how he's feeling.
Yeah. The one thing I thought was strange was the different colored women, though. That was kind of bizarre. It was
Well, that's a standard trope in any sci-fi thing. How many times has Captain James T.
Sure.
Kirk
Well,
laid
they're
with
always
a green
green.
woman?
They're always green. This one had like rainbow-colored women in it, and it was just like,
Well, Gamora's green. They had the pink ones.
Right.
Where's his name? Barut.
I have no idea. All I know is it was just kind of bizarre. It's just like,
When in doubt, when creating an alien race, you just make them a different color than what we see on Earth. That's general, and maybe you throw a prosthetic or two on them.
right.
That didn't bother me. I think
It didn't bother me. It was just kind of bizarre. It was just like, okay.
Well, I guess that just means out there in the universe, in the Marvel universe as it stands right now, we have the monstrous-looking aliens, and then we have the ones that look just like us, to some degree.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the one that looked the most alien was the character of Nebula, played by Karen Gillan, who plays one of the villains in it, and that one looked very alien.
But she's also a cyborg, so it's just like, was that more robotic?
Yeah, but even still, it was something. Everything else you can kind of see human traits as, okay, this is just another human being,
Yeah.
dressed up, in paint. And with her character, her character was very much like it felt and looked alien, like it was not of this world and was something else entirely. And that's what made that, it sounds like the one exception out of all of that, and everything. So
You end up with a lot of bipedal things that, for the most part, look human. You don't end up with tentacles, is what you don't end up with. You hear things mentioned, and you think Star-Lord mentions he slept with this one chick who had tentacles and eels for teeth, and why would I do that?
right. But like I said, it wasn't a huge point for me. It was just something that I just kind of noticed. It was just like, well, I just thought it was kind of a little bit bizarre in my own mind. So,
Like, this was a sci-fi movie that other sci-fi movies can learn from. There's sometimes you end up with...
Or how?
Well, sometimes you end up with a sci-fi movie and to explain things, they go so in-depth that it's just... It either spends so much time doing it where you're just like, you know what, I lost interest about half an hour ago. Or it becomes nothing but explanation. This was one where it, as a story and as from character, it just sucked you in to begin with. They're like, you know what, I'm willing to just accept this as what it is. Like a lot of technology. In certain sci-fi movies, they go to the utmost degree to just go, this is how this works, and this is how this plays. One of the opening sequences, he just has this device, he hits it a few times, and it shows him, I guess, what life was on the abandoned planet. Like, maybe the last life signatures that were there, so that way he gets an idea of where something is. Kind of like a map, and you're just like, you know what? Fuck it, I accept it. I accepted that can happen. I don't need the explanation that some would go into great detail. We're given the information that we need, and all of it is really just, this is who the character is. This is why they do what they do. And that it just comes from, I'll follow you.
Well, the Marvel movies have a habit of doing it in all their movies. I mean, something that they've been doing is that each of their movies takes on a different genre of how they deliver it, which has worked for them. And it has successfully, I feel, reinvigorated the comic book movie franchise from like becoming endlessly repeated, for the most part. But one of the things that they have been good at is just it gets to a point where you just kind of accept it because there's other stuff that makes it feel more real. So like with Captain America: Winter Soldier that came out earlier this spring.
Came out April.
In April, yes. You just kind of there's a certain point where you just kind of accept that a guy can toss a shield around and catch it again, even though it is at least highly statistically probable that it would come back to you like a fucking boomerang. But it just gets to a point where it's just like, okay, that's what he's doing.
This is the character.
Because for me, at least anyway, it was like everything else was being addressed realistically, and it wasn't like it wasn't like that was like the main thrust of the whole fucking thing, which was the kind of emphasis on the extreme. Whereas sometimes it's needed. So like with fantasy movies like The Hobbit, it's just like it actually helps somewhat to have a kind of a background story.
Well, it's something like The Hobbit. It has that long history and mythos to it that that as a fan of the writings of Tolkien, you want to hear.
But if you're not a fan, though, it's like you still kind of need. He's like, okay, why the hell are these guys going after this mountain? Why is there a dragon there?
Look at how they explain what you're talking about is they're given some kind of purpose, and it's character driven. Whereas I'm talking about the technological jargon that some movies throw in.
Right. Okay. I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Yeah. With a lot of the jargon and stuff like that, it's just kind of like you're just kind of overwhelmed with like, okay, this is over my head, and it's the same way people will look at books. You throw a book, it's on like statistics or like economics of like Germany or something like that, and you get on, you don't even get past the first page because it's just you know what, this is over my head. I'm not even gonna roll with this anymore. And so yeah, a lot of the jargon definitely can have that element to it where it's just like, yeah, I'm not even gonna bother with this, trying to understand this anymore because I can't.
Like, look at the Godzilla movie, the one that just came out. We get the idea that this is a beast that existed before man, and that his job is technically to keep the balance, is what we can guess. But for the most part, it can just be summed up with forgetting the guy's name, Ken Watanabe, with his one line of "Let them fight," where it's just like, let's just get to the point. And yes, there's a bunch of character stuff there too. We learn about Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
His character's role and just how his family's connected to it, and you feel for him, and just how to protect his family he's willing to kill himself. But at the same time, it's just like, we don't need this big elaborate explanation of what Godzilla is. And they didn't give us a big elaborate explanation. They just gave us enough to just go, I'm willing to accept this. Now let them fight.
Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't, though. And with Guardians of the Galaxy, it did work. Because there wasn't at the very least, it wasn't a whole lot of it. Because, one, it was taking place within a sci-fi universe. So there's extra leeway that's automatic. That yeah. I think we, as viewers, in general, give it extra automatically. And then, two, because it wasn't a whole bunch of stuff that was just like, all right, that's just kind of too over the top, and stuff like that. So, like for example, if you ever seen kind of the old school Chinese kung fu movies, they do a lot of like flying and jumping around and stuff like that and whatever, and that's kind of almost what mainly happens in the movie, and it gets to the point where it just kind of feels like, what, it starts to become the focus of the entire movie. And with Guardians of the Galaxy, it didn't feel that way. It felt like, okay, there's this, moving on. And then it touched on something that was kind of more realistic, or at least more relatable, something you can latch on to, whatever. And they were able to strike that balance just right. But that's kind of a hard thing to do.
I mean, talk about relatability, that brings in this whole character thing. Should we do an analysis of some of the characters and just how the actors, do we applaud them for what they've done?
Give me what your thoughts on it.
Well, we can't talk about Guardians of the Galaxy without talking about Star-Lord. Okay. And how they set up his character, Star-Lord played by Christopher Pratt. there's an opening sequence, and to be honest, it got me a little teary-eyed.
You're gonna want to probably mention spoilers, possible spoilers, if you're going to go into.
I'm not going to go into great detail, but the opening sequence really gets you to feel for the character because he goes through something that is hard, and it takes place in '88, and it's him as a child, and it's just like holy shit. And then on top of that, he's thrust into a situation. It's like holy shit, and you see the aftermath. I mean, when we talk about Guardians of the Galaxy in the comic books, and when Star-Lord forms the team, he is kind of a man-child. He's someone that was taken off planet at a young age. In the comics, he knows who his father is right off the bat. But in the movie, not so much. But it's something where being that young, being taken off of his home world and thrust into that situation, he's a child. He's someone that's he's a man-child. He's an adult, or a child trapped in an adult body. And just how he's very personal. His personality to begin with is very very self-centered. I think Chris Pratt played that well. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's that moment where he's just sitting there going, to be honest, I'm going to forget that you were here. Talking to a girl that's on a ship, just like, I'm going to forget that you were here. But you clearly know what's happened. She's wearing a t-shirt that you saw him wear earlier. The other characters, we got, let's talk about Gamora, played by Zoe Saldana, is that how you pronounce her last name? Mm-hmm. Who is familiar with the sci-fi genre. In the Star Trek movies directed by J.J. Abrams, she's Lieutenant Uhura. And she's familiar with comic book movies. When they did The Losers, she's the main female character in that.
She's done Avatar. She's also
known for Avatar.
Right.
I never saw Avatar.
Okay.
I don't like James Cameron.
Gotcha.
But as far as her portrayal of Gamora, I will say I think she was one of the, as far as on the spectrum, she was one of the weaker ones, but I wouldn't say like she's the weak link. No, she was still strong in her portrayal.
Why do you think she was?
I think hers felt a little too rushed. The idea of her being the adopted daughter of Thanos and working for the quote-unquote bad guys, and then wanting to join on the good guys' side.
I see.
That one I felt needed a little bit more explanation.
Okay, yeah.
But the whole idea of her being trained to be a weapon and a warrior, and the way that her dialogue sets her apart from someone like Quill and Rocket, who are very much speaking in, I would say, vernacular, whereas she speaks a little more formally. Mm-hmm. And I guess that being raised by the Mad Titan himself, Thanos, would lead into that. So, to her credit, she played a character who is separate from everyone else, but still has a good heart. Unlike Nebula, who's her sister, who just is, no, I gotta be the better daughter. Being that middle child, as I put it. Mm-hmm. So let's jump into Karen Gillan for a little bit there.
Okay.
Because she plays Nebula, and to be honest, I knew very little of her before Doctor Who.
For those of you who don't know, she played the
Amy Pond
in Doctor Who a couple of years ago. She was the assistant with the long red hair before she chopped it off for this movie, which apparently she's become well known for as well now.
She was someone that, I guess in England, had notoriety, but in the States or elsewhere had almost nothing unless you were familiar with the British comedy show that she was on.
She was known in the States because Doctor Who was big at that point in the States.
Well, I mean before Doctor Who.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right.
And then Doctor Who is what set her off. And
so, what is it that you're saying about her in this movie, though?
In this movie, I was impressed because I'm used to just seeing her being used as a plot device in Doctor Who. That was my biggest complaint about the Matt Smith Doctor Who. Was the fact that the woman just seemed to be a plot device. Mm-hmm. Particularly her. And I always wanted Amy Pond to be more, and then when you see her in Guardians, just like, you know what? Bravo! Bravo for taking on a role that, yeah, it's sci-fi, and you're going from one sci-fi genre to one sci-fi franchise to another one. But at the same time, actually, her portrayal of her, which is the middle child, the daughter that isn't the favorite. Thanos refers to Gamora as his favorite daughter, right in front of her. And Nebula is just, her response is, "Thanks for the talk, Dad." And yeah, she plays a cyborg, so it's kind of this robotic feel, and they did something to her voice to give it a bit more of a robotic feel. But you get this sense of just passive-aggressive resentment that I think a lot of us can relate to.
I'll say this. I'll say this about her performance. Is that, I am a fan of the Doctor Who series, so I am familiar with her portrayal of Amy Pond in that. I didn't feel she was a plot device. If anything, there are a lot of fans who complained that she became too much the focus of the show rather than the Doctor. So, which tomatoes.
Was it her or the fact that she was pregnant?
Just her. Okay. Pretty much. But tomatoes. Everyone has their own interpretation. But I felt like, she had established then that, this isn't just someone who's easy on the eyes. And she is.
Oh, yeah, she is.
I mean, this woman can act. She's good at what she does. And she comes across as being committed at what she does because, again, her main thing that she was known for, even when she was doing the Doctor Who and became big in the States, she was known for that long red mane of hair. And then she shaved the whole bloody thing off for that fucking movie, for Guardians of the Galaxy.
There was a big thing at Comic-Con when they did the panel. She comes out with, and it looks like, her hair's still there, and then halfway through she just took it off to reveal her bald head.
Right, and I was impressed. I was generally like, okay, that was your signature thing. I mean, it's hard enough for a woman to shave off all her hair, period, anyway. But that you did this, knowing it was that fucking long, and God knows how long it's going to take you to grow it back, and you did this for this role, and okay, yeah. I'll give you credit for that.
Yeah.
But as far as how she actually portrayed that in the movie, I liked the mannerisms, the body language. The body language was, again, felt very alien. It felt like there was rage and there was anger there. I mean, this woman had.
She held her arms very tensely when she would
her
walk.
whole body was fucking tense. I mean, this woman had issues,
And she expressed them in a way that was explosive.
And I would say that I liked Nebula's character better than Gamora's because of the little things that were there that just kind of rocked it, for me and everything. So I'll give her props for that. She did a good job. She's a good actress at what she does. Hopefully she keeps going.
I hope they bring Nebula back. I want to see the actress in other things like. When Oculus came out, it came out earlier this year, I was like, oh, she's in that. I want to see her in it. I never saw it. But I will, eventually.
Right. But on to other actors.
On the other actors. Let's talk about Dave Bautista in his first movie role.
That was not this one, right?
Yeah. I don't think Dave Bautista...
Yes, he was.
In what?
A movie by RZA. Came out a couple years ago.
Oh, we talking about the Kung Fu one?
Yes.
Okay, what about a role where he actually is the lead?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because I saw that. God, how could I forget that? The Man with the Iron Fist.
Yes.
But let's talk about him actually seeing more of him besides I'm just going to fight things. Mm-hmm. Which, ironically enough, he does, playing Drax the Destroyer, he does more than just fight. He's a character, he plays, like I said, Drax the Destroyer, which was a slightly different interpretation of what they do in the comic. In the comic, he is human, and then Thanos takes him and genetically alters him. He's very similar to Gamora and Nebula. Where in Guardians, they just portray him as an alien. I don't know if they'll ever go into greater detail in that. Personally, I don't care. I just accept him as an alien. He's just a big green dude. But he's a man who's lost his family. Like, he saw his wife and kid murdered in front of him. And he's the vengeance character. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I was actually really impressed with his ability to, one, portray that, the hurt whenever he talks about his family. Like, that made me sit there and go, holy shit, I actually feel for him. Whereas some actors or characters, where you go like, I'm gonna get revenge, they just yell and punch the sky, which is kind of what you would expect Drax to do, but when he talks about his family, and there's one moment where Groot just releases a bunch of spores of light, and you just see the look on Drax's face to one of, like, this is one of the most beautiful things I ever saw. And then, of course, there is, being the hulking beast that he is, he also has his moments of insanity. I think the trailers call him a lunatic, where he's just... there's a scene where they're just flying the plane, they're shooting shit, and he's just having a ball in the back.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. It was just like, what? I was impressed. I mean, it is hard for a... if you don't watch wrestling, he is a former WWE wrestler, and it is hard for wrestlers to come out of that genre into acting and be taken seriously. A lot have tried. I think the only one who's ever really successfully done it has been The Rock. Right. So, in Batista, it looks like to become one of those guys who's actually been able to do it.
Yeah.
So good on him for that. I was impressed with how he kind of portrayed that and how he kind of rolled with that. And his acting was very good. The one that stood out to me the most was Rocket Raccoon.
Voiced by Bradley Cooper.
Right. And on the one hand, it seemed kind of blatantly obvious because, it kind of showed him as the crazy one. Whenever a movie kind of shows the crazy one, it kind of says subconsciously, we're going to give this guy a lot of attention. So I was kind of expecting that, and I wasn't really going to give a lot of credit to that. But
they made him very human in terms of character.
It wasn't that for me. It was that he is the one who kind of speaks what you're thinking to the audience. He's almost in a subconscious way breaking the fourth wall. So there was one scene like towards the end where he's just like, "Okay, we're a bunch of fucking idiots now." And I'm not gonna.
We're standing.
I don't want to give away too much or anything like that, but it was just like, yeah, you were thinking that at one point, and he just voices that for you, and it's just kind of really appreciated. So, and again, to my craziness, I liked the idea of a psychotic raccoon wielding a machine gun. That was just great. And he's only like 3 feet tall, So
I wouldn't even give him that.
Right. I mean,
maybe a foot and a half too.
Right. I mean, hell, if you gave him a pair of claws, you might as well play Wolverine. So, because he kind of was playing that wild, kind of crazy, insane, unpredictable character and stuff. So it was, that was when I was kind of really the most surprised by.
Well, it's something where when they were making the movie, James Gunn even said himself, like, Rocket and Groot, who's the big walking tree, voiced by Vin Diesel, they're the real heart of the movie. They're the ones that you sit there and you can, even though they're CGI, you relate to them.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly Rocket, not so much Groot. Groot's just fun. But to be able to relate to a CGI character, and to hear some people when they do CGI voices, you end
Rocket
up with,
versus Golem, that's all I got to say. Something deathmatch, I want to see that.
I mean, it's something where with some CGI characters, you don't get that connection. You get fucking Jar Jar Binks, and you just hate the character. But this Rocket, the voice that Bradley Cooper gave him was just something. It was a little rough, it was a little tumble, it was different than the standard Bradley Cooper voice. Mm-hmm. And it just worked with the character. It didn't take you out of it. It just made you think, like, this exists. And you accepted it, and then you're like, holy shit, I relate to him, because there's certain moments that just makes Rocket not so much being the guy who's voicing your opinion. You learn a little bit about him, and you're just like, you feel for the little guy.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I will say this about the Gamora character, because I didn't really say much when you first brought her up.
Go ahead, bring it
up. Was that I liked how they kind of portrayed... I liked it didn't have an immediate romance. I won't say more than that. But I very much...
How she didn't fall for...
Right. Yeah. I liked that it went against kind of the stereotypical, this is what you expect. This is what you would expect.
But what we end up in movies now is a lot. No matter what kind of genre it is, there's always some kind of romance element to it.
Well, and it almost seems like anytime you add a woman as part of a character, part of a main cast to a character, the almost immediate question that man or woman comes to mind is when did they fuck? Which is unfortunate.
Will they? Won't they?
Which is sad. I mean, I'm not definitely if that's part of the story, that's part of the story. But if it's just kind of thrown in there to be in there, then yeah, that's stupid. But
yeah,
I like that this wasn't like that. I do agree with you that her story did feel a bit rushed and everything like that. But outside of that, I felt like everything else was fine. Again, she's a well-known sci-fi actress and stuff like that. She knows her shit. So.
And they're already announced that they're doing a sequel, so there's plenty of room for development.
Right. It's not like they have to cram everything into one movie.
Yeah.
And whatnot. But if I had to choose between her and Nebula, which one was the more intriguing of the sisters, Nebula. I would have to say it was Nebula.
And I think it just shows because
that's my nature. Well, mostly though.
I think Nebula stands out because we saw her less on screen than we did Gamora. Whereas Gamora, the longer she was on screen, was just like, I want more information. Whereas Nebula, since she had a shorter screen time, we just accept it.
It felt more like less said more.
Yeah.
Which is, I imagine, as if a person's an actor, that's very difficult to pull off, and even more difficult to pull off if you don't have a lot of lines.
Well, it's more difficult because then you're not relying on the lines to express who you are. You have to make little moments, like you said, the body language stand out, how the line is said, and how you move.
Right, and that was impressive. But beyond that, though, Groot, he reminded me of Chewbacca. That's all I can say.
Well, this whole movie felt like Groot was Chewbacca and everyone else was Han Solo. Which I'm okay with. I mean, we didn't have whiny Luke. We never had a mentor, Obi-Wan.
I think Luke gets too much flack for that, to be honest, but go ahead.
And we didn't have the snarky princess. The closest thing that came to it was Gamora. But even she was more badass than Leia. I mean, if you think about it, Gamora, she's a trained assassin. There's a whole fight sequence, and she gets roughed up a little bit. That I applauded because it was just like, you know what? How many times in movies do we see where the woman, yeah, she can really fight and no one can lay a hand on her? She got beat up too.
True. I never thought about that. That's very true.
I am a little saddened that we didn't see Nebula beat up on the guys. But we needed to see her and Gamora fight. Mm-hmm. That's who we see fight, the two women. But they needed to because they're opposing sisters.
Well, if they had done it too much, it would have felt too much like a cat fight.
Yeah. And I think they balanced it out nicely between that and the different fight sequence.
Right. It's just like, to be honest, I was kind of afraid of that. This is like, cat fight.
Oh, here we go. Where's the pool of mud? Okay.
Basically, yes.
And that, some movies have gone so far as to just have a pool, them toss a turn and fall into a pool of mud. That speaks a lot, but that's a different subject altogether.
Right. But I guess the other one being the character of Ronan the Accuser, who, like you said, was the antagonist. I didn't come away feeling one way or the other about that. It was kind of okay.
He was bad to be bad.
Yeah, but it was. Yeah, basically. I mean, the acting didn't suck. But at the same time, there wasn't a lot of depth there, other than how he related to Nebula, and to Gamora, and Thanos. Beyond that, not a whole lot there. But then again, within an hour and a half, 2 hours time, how much can you fit in there?
Well, it's something where comparing to other Marvel villains, when we got Obadiah Stane in the first Iron Man movie, played by Jeff Bridges, we didn't know too much about him either, and it was just like, really? Like,
yeah.
It felt like Iron Man
that's
villains.
That's all the villains. Yeah, I mean,
well,
that's
not
all.
all.
Let me rephrase that. Hold on. That is most of the Marvel villains except for Loki. Loki is the only Marvel villain.
And the Winter Soldier.
True. Point taken. For one movie, but Loki is the only villain who's appeared in more than one movie.
and he's the one where you're given some information, and you do kind of just sometimes just go,
you get his
I
journey.
understand.
Yeah, you get his journey. You're and everything, so that when he does be bad, you kind of know where he's coming from. And yeah, to be honest, yeah, it took 2 fucking movies to actually get to that point, or 3 in this case. But still, it was something that you could identify with, and that people obviously identify with because people fucking love the character and love the actor, who plays him.
Yeah.
But as far as Ronan the Accuser goes, he wasn't really given that chance. But again, it wasn't that the acting was bad; it was just screen time, and this is what we have to work with, and whatever.
And maybe it's something where in future movies they could go into Kree culture a little bit. Because it kind of felt like the Xandarans, which is part of the Nova Empire, they're really more high-tech, really bright, whereas the Kree, the science is there, but at the same time, it's very dark, very bleak. It operates just to operate. And he even says, I follow the old ways, which makes me wonder, is Kree culture really that? I want to see other Kree now.
Right. Yeah, if they had elaborate a little bit more on what that culture was like, I suppose. Yeah, I could see that.
I do want to say this: there's this cast. There's small cameos here and there from big name actors. One of the ones I loved was John C. Reilly.
Who was he?
He was one of the Nova officers. He's the one that arrests them.
Oh,
where
okay.
in the trailers, he goes, we capture him in Xandar, and he gives a brief little explanation of who they are. And I like the fact that he played a Nova Corps member as almost like a New York City beat cop. Yeah. To me, that was interesting. That's what the Nova Corps technically is. They're beat cops. I want to see John C. Reilly play Detective Harvey Bullock in a Batman, scenario.
I can see that. Now that I see him.
And it just works with his voice and just how his posture and everything. Just there's when he arrests Peter Quill for the first time and you see it happen, just how he has this reputation, just how he knows the guy. It just felt like, okay, buddy, come on. Like a cop that's arrested someone before.
Right. Yeah. And that was kind of funny how they kind of played off the whole kind of reputation thing and how they kind of eventually made that work. So that being said, do you have any other thoughts on the movie besides the characters and some of its history since you seem to know about that?
I felt like the pacing was very well done. The colors, just for each world, because they visit different planets, different worlds. That's one of the advantages of doing a space epic, is that you can see different things. Just how you saw how each planet was, the looks, the feels, the colors, how people interacted. It looked really... It didn't... Everything wasn't all the same. Mm-hmm. You saw different cultures, and you wanted to learn more. And you know what? Did you? No. But does it matter? Not so much. I do want to say this this goes with your whole, there just seemed to be a rainbow of people. There were sometimes where just plain people there, and you're like, well, how did they get there? Is that just people getting abducted and just end up there, or is that just humanity almost, or very close to humanity, populating other planets? I want to know how that happened.
Yeah.
Look at the Nova Corps. They were all human. Or at least they looked human. And we don't see, the Xandarans, they were the pink people. Mm-hmm. Because when he goes to the guy named the Broker, he's one of the pink people, and he says, that's my culture. Ronan wants to kill or destroy Xandaran culture, my culture. He's a Xandaran. Where do we get Glenn Close up there? Where do we get all these humans at the Nova Corps? Do they pick off on Earth? Or what they call it, Terran? That's something I want to learn.
I guess my final take on that movie is that, having seen it only once so far, is that, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised by it.
Oh, yeah.
It was very balanced out. The character drive was strong. There were some questions here and there, yeah, but, I wasn't expecting this a perfect movie anyway. So I found it forgivable. They may expand upon it in later movies. But overall, it was just I was genuinely impressed. It was a fun movie. It became serious at certain points. And it quite literally, in some cases, spoke to the audience in terms of, incorporating, this is what, how, as an audience member, how you're thinking and feeling and everything going on with what's happening. So, yeah, it was very good, and it'd be interesting to see if that kind of becomes a separate Marvel universe within.
They did say that that's leading up to Avengers 3. That's the thing, like, oh fuck, you want something separate for once. They are doing a cartoon series, and I don't know if that's connected at all.
I don't care about that. Yeah, it's I say fuck because it's just like I wouldn't mind it being separate.
Neither would I.
You know what? You got something here. You can create 2 universes within one universe. Why would we want to fuck with
We
that?
don't need to see them touch on Earth.
Right.
We want to see Thanos eventually touch on Earth, but they could never meet the Avengers at all, and we'd be happy.
Right. Keep it simple, keep it light, then that works. And you got something good, why fuck it up? But then again, they got good writers. They seem to be they're getting good writers lately, so maybe they can make it work, but still.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my thoughts on that movie. So.
Well, we're running out of time here. If you saw the movie, let us know what your thoughts are. What would you rate it? And who knows, maybe we'll come back to this in some kind of overview or when Guardians 2 come out. You can email us those at genbreakdown, that's GEN breakdown @gmail.com. Signing off, I'm Derek.
And I'm Jamal.
And we are Groot.